And it's started recording now. Brilliant. Right, welcome everybody to Billesley Ward Forum. We've got a packed agenda, and we've got the first item is going to be on the Commonwealth Games project. So if people could mute themselves, because I can hear myself talking back somewhere. And then we've then got a discussion on local issues. So we've got someone from the fire service to give us an update, and we've got someone from the council to give us an update on travellers and the local parks. And then Councillor Phil Davis is going to talk about the Billesley Environmental Trust, and then we've got our police sergeant coming, who's joining us at 7 o'clock later to talk about police issues. So I'm going to hand over to Karen now for the first item. Karen.
Thank you, Councillor. So good evening, everybody. So the first part of the meeting is going to be given over to the ward facilitation for the Commonwealth Games Celebrating Communities budget, which are independently facilitated. You've got me. So I'm Karen Cheen. I'm Head of Service for Neighbourhood Development Support Unit. Obviously, I think everybody's aware of the Commonwealth Games. So there is this funding stream for celebrating communities. Billesley Ward has an allocation of 35,000. That's the total amount. What you're going to be voting on, because you all have a vote as long as you haven't got a conflict of interest in the project, and this is for the round one applications that were put in, which closed at the end of June. There is a round two, but we'll talk about that once we've done this round. So the proposal that you are about to hear already has been assessed in that it meets the criteria. That's in terms of how it's now come to a ward meeting, and the proposal is from Moseley Rugby Community Foundation. Jack Richards, who actually put in the proposal, is away on holiday this week, so Linda Batchelor is going to do the presentation. In terms of process, what we allow each of the proposal presenters to do is that they've got 5 minutes to give a presentation in whatever format they want to. And then there'll be time for questions and answers from yourselves. And then it'll be put over to voting. I'm not very tech savvy, so all it will be is you can either use the raising hand button on your computer, or actually just put your hand up. The only thing and those who have a relationship with the Community Rugby Foundation and the presenter are not allowed to vote, because it would be seen as a conflict of interest, but residents and key stakeholders and councillors are allowed to vote. And then right at the end, I'll just give a little bit of an update on round two. So are there any questions on the process? Is it clear? Everybody clear? Great. So Linda, I'm going to hand over to you. I will use the clock on my computer just to do the timing, but it's just over to you so people get a broad idea around the proposal that's been presented, and just so you know, you're on mute at the moment.
Right, I'm unmuted, so hopefully you can hear me. And firstly, apologies if it's me that's doing the presenting. It should have been Jack. And as Karen has said, he's gone out on holiday over to America to attend a much postponed wedding. So if I have to refer to notes, I apologise for looking away, not as slick as I could be. But our initiative with regards to this project was to try and engage schools and school pupils with the Commonwealth Games. And what we propose to do is to use some of our first team players and our community coaches to go into schools to introduce the idea, to attend assemblies or to host assemblies. So first of all, give them some background to the history of the Commonwealth, the meaning of the Commonwealth, the rights and responsibilities of belonging to the Commonwealth, and the role of the Queen within the Commonwealth. I think just to give the pupils a sort of more rounded idea of what the Commonwealth means, and it isn't just a lot of people getting together and doing something similar to the Olympics. Can everybody hear me? I can see some people shrugging and, okay, thanks. So we'll be using some of our community coaches and we'll be using some of our first team players to do that. The reason we're using some of our first team players is that some of them are from some of these Commonwealth countries, and I think it would be really interesting for them to go into the schools and explain to the pupils what their country is like, what their life there is like. So we've got coaches from Nigeria, Fiji, Kenya and Tonga at the moment, and we've also got some of our community coaches from other Commonwealth countries. We'll be working with primary schools. We've identified 8 primary schools in the immediate area to Billesley Common that we'll be working with. So we'll go in, we'll run assemblies. We'll then we'll then have the schools select one of the countries as their country to represent, and the schools will then focus on that particular country, learning about the history, the culture, the geography, the language, food, etc., the flag, the making of flags, and just to again give them a sort of rounded understanding of that particular country. The community coaches will then be going back into the schools to coach pupils in a variety of Commonwealth Games sports. That would be sort of tag rugby, rugby sevens, track and field events, plus what we thought was one additional sort of random sport along the lines of the sort of Jeux sans frontières type sport. So it could be a 3-legged race or an egg and spoon race, just something that would allow more pupils to take part. We would then host a sports day stroke festival at Moseley Rugby Club, Birmingham Moseley Rugby Club. Parents would be invited, the sports leaders from local secondary schools we would invite to attend and help as officials. And the schools will then represent their chosen country in the colours of that country, including a flag ceremony, national anthems. They will compete in the sports, there'll be medals, there'll be certificates for every pupil. But we would hope to host a sort of podium ceremony where we'd again have our first team players come in and actually award the medals. All pupils will receive a certificate to say they've taken part in the festival. So in a nutshell, that's the project. It's going into the schools, the coaches explaining about the Commonwealth, the schools hopefully take it, delivering lessons around the Commonwealth countries, doing some sports coaching, and then rounding off with a big sports day at the club. So hopefully
Thanks, Linda. Do you just want to confirm the amount of the proposal as well?
It's £4,425, and we would anticipate working with 8 primary schools, and within the schools we would work with the schools to identify the year group that would benefit the most from it. So it would either be a year 5 or a year 6 year group. And again, we'd be looking to the teachers to guide us as to the pupils they would want us to work with particularly.
Smashing. Thank you. So I'm going to throw it open to the floor. Is there anybody who'd like to ask a question or a comment? Now that could be a good sign, Linda, because everybody thinks it's good. You've given all the information.
Either that or I've talked so quickly that people haven't been able to understand it. But I hope that's not the case. As far as I'm concerned, I think it will be a really great event that we can host, and making use of the fact that where we're placed on Billesley Common is right in the heart of the Billesley community. And I just think it'd be a lovely event to have lots of pupils there from different schools representing different countries.
So I can see Councillor Davis has put his face in the frame. So is there a question?
Yes, really. Just to ask Linda, what's her aim in terms of the legacy of this particular project? What does she hope the long-standing effect of it will be?
Well, we're hoping that the long-standing effect will, of course, be the understanding of the role of the Commonwealth. I think at the moment, and certainly over the last few months, there's been some slight negativity about the role of Commonwealth, about its, the oppression, and I think an understanding of the role of the Commonwealth, the benefits of the Commonwealth, will be a legacy. And I think also the link with the sports, the introduction of the different types of sports to some pupils. So we're hoping that will be the case. We're more than hoping. We are looking to then run a sort of reading and sports program within some of the primary schools that will build on our introduction into the primary schools and our sports coaching that we've done.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So are people happy to go to a vote? As I say, hands up or that.
Do you need me to leave?
You don't need to leave, Linda, but you're not able to vote.
No.
So if people don't want to use the electronic buttons, could you just put your hands up again? Thank you very much. Is there anybody against? In that case, that has gone through and will go forward as a formal recommendation to be formally signed off. So in terms of the next of the process, I will send that through to my colleague, Neil DaCosta, and then it's actually formally signed off with the authority for the money next Monday. So I don't envisage there will be an issue. It's signed off by senior officers, one of which is myself, so I've obviously just heard it as well. So and then conditions of grant aid will be sent out, closely followed by the money, hopefully. So thank you very much for doing that. Just to confirm then, there is now about 30,500 remaining in the budget. The closing date for round 2 is the end of November. So you may, councillors, want to have a discussion around how to ensure that there are other proposals that do come in for Billesley, so that the monies can be used next year. I know at the last meeting you talked about perhaps informing some of the schools, but it would be a real shame for those monies that have been allocated to the ward not to be used by the ward. What I will do when I finish speaking is I'll put all the details in the chat box and the website where all the information can be found. The proposals can go in at 3 levels. There's an under 1,000, there's a 5,000 and a maximum of 10,000. So proposals can go in on those, and there are criteria by which the proposals have to follow. It doesn't all have to be about sport, so I think it's really clear that we want to encourage proposals along the other criteria. So as Linda has said, an awful lot of it is around the Commonwealth. So there is one around sport and rec, but the other main one is about ready, steady, fun. So it might be street parties, it might be celebratory events, it might be street games. There are a whole series of things that the monies can be applied for, but do have to go through a community organisation, a school or a church. They can't be applied for by individuals. So I don't know if there are any questions around that, and I'm happy to answer them if I can, but that it might warrant a discussion with people around the virtual table as to how best the remainder of the funding can be encouraged for others in the ward to apply for.
And if I may then, Chair, did you say £30,000 was remaining?
Yes, because you had, even by my basic maths, have I done it wrong? You've got 35,000 as an allocation. Right. It was 4,425 the amount, so it's about 30 and a half.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else, but my computer's gone all funny now.
We can still see you if you can hear us.
Somebody accidentally has shared their screen.
Yes, I think that's
their screen. It'll go back to normal.
Yeah.
Do there then. Perhaps that's me.
I think it might be Councillor Davis.
Why does it turn on captions? Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, it's all right. Is it me? Have I done that?
I think so.
Well, I'll come out then. It's all right. We'll come out and rejoin. That's probably the simplest thing. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions? If not, I shall hand over for the main part of the ward forum meeting back to Councillor Iroh, who I think is chairing this one. And I'll stay on the call just to put the details in the chat box, but then I won't stay for the rest of the meeting. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was brilliant. Thank you. And I'm really delighted that amazing project has gone forward, and I can't wait to attend and see the kids competing in their Commonwealth country. Oh, obviously it wasn't Phil then, because Phil's left the meeting and it's still like that. So who was it? Who is it then? How do we know? Is it? My one says Linda at the bottom. Does that mean that it's Linda that's sharing?
Must be Linda, yeah. It says Linda Batchelor. So Linda, you're sharing your screen.
Linda at the bottom.
Unshare by clicking the little upward arrow in the white box next to the leave.
There you are, you're in there, that's right.
Brilliant. Well done, Linda. Awesome. Phil, it wasn't you. We've worked it out. Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. Right. So the rest of our agenda then. So we're on item 3 now. We're discussing local issues in Billesley. So the first one is the fire service update, and we have a firefighter here with us. Hello.
Hi, you're right. I'm Watch Commander at Billesley Fire Station, Billesley Green Watch.
What's your name? Sorry, fireman.
It's Watch Commander Mark Lawn.
Watch Commander Mark Lawn. Lovely to meet you.
How you doing? You're right. And I'm on Green Watch here. So yeah, it's funny you're talking about the Commonwealth Games, because the part of the strategy for the West Mids is to deal with emerging risks. And the big one there is the Commonwealth Games. So within the West Midlands area, we're getting an extra technical rescue team, specifically to because we've got the Commonwealth Games coming next year. So we've increased the number of specialist people that are there to deal with whatever that might come if needs be. And we've also we're doing a lot of things around emerging risks. We're doing big, large-scale exercises as well, so that we're training in readiness for all eventualities, really. So it's interesting that you're talking about the Commonwealth Games budgets, and that's something that the fire service is also getting ready for. And then the other part of the emergency risks that the fire service have been working tirelessly on is on the flammable cladding since Grenfell. So we're still working hard on training for incidents like Grenfell if they were to happen again, but also our fire safety departments are working, really hard on ensuring that we're aware of these issues and that they're being dealt with as quickly as possible for the local area. More locally, it's business as usual in the fire service. Pretty much, although we're not allowed to go out as without risk assessment, so we can't like join you guys for a meeting without a specific risk assessment being in place, or into schools as such. But we are still there to respond to all emergencies, and if when we're going into work, we've got also what's called test and release. I don't know if you've heard of it. That if we it's something specific to us, if we get pinged for a contact for coronavirus, that we can be we go in and have a test, and we can be released back to work if we're negative, and then we can then go back to self-isolation so that we can carry on with our role within the communities to make sure that we've got the numbers required, to make sure that we've got adequate cover around the West Midlands. So that's something that's come in, fairly recently. We're still big on the agenda is vulnerable people. So we're doing a lot of partnership working, and we're still doing we're doing safe and well checks within people's houses where we're fitting smoke alarms. Now we're struggling to get hold of smoke alarms, believe it or not. We're only able to be fitting at the moment one per property. So you might get people talk about this within the area. So until we get our stocks back up to a sufficient level, we're only able to fit one smoke alarm into people's houses at the moment. So that's an update that you might not have heard about. That's happened relatively, recently. That we've done a strategy on that. At the moment, the West Midlands Fire Service are under massive, budget cuts like everywhere else, and there's different savings that have got to be made. And the latest one that the fire service are trialling is risk-based crewing. So at the moment, you have a fire engine, which you'll have a big red fire engine that has 5 people on, and you have a smaller vehicle which will have 3 people on. And they're toying with the idea of, instead of 8 being on duty, whether we can man that with 7, and that the watch commander who's in charge of the shift, which is my rank, that when the incident comes in, they send out the number of people that they think is required for the incident. So it's a bit more out of the hands of the fire control, and sort of we're looking at how we can do more with less money, really. So we're still trying to do as much as we can for to keep business as usual with a smaller budget that is ever shrinking. So they're the main things really that's been happening recently. I can take questions, or if anyone wants to hear about different things, but I'm not sure what you want to hear, or you've got questions for us.
On mute, Catherine. Still muted, Catherine.
Sorry. Thank you so much. We'll start with Beryl. Thank you, Beryl. That was great, Mark. Thank you.
Hi, Mark, can I just ask you, I'm on the committee of Friends of Swanshurst Park and also volunteer litter picker. We need the contact details of Billesley Fire Station for our chair, Humira, to ask a question. how do we get in touch with you?
Have
A
you
contact
got a pen?
email address that you will answer.
Yeah, there's a telephone number to ring, which the station telephone number is 0121.
Just hang on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
0121 380 7538.
Okay.
And there's also a bit an email address, so it's Billesley. Hang on. Billesley at wmfs.net.
wmfs.net.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Thank you.
And if you speak to Kay, she's got my details if you're struggling to get through. And if you've got any questions, you can always go through me, and I could forward anything or get involved in stuff.
That's very kind. Thank you very much.
Just one thing to add on to the other thing is, I don't know if you were aware, the police are based here now as well. So you've got a neighbourhood team that work from the fire service, which is really important to know for Billesley, because obviously the police station's closed. So they work out of here, which is quite good actually, because with collaborative working and things, you can bounce off each other. So it's just something you might not have been aware of.
That's great, thank you, Mark. Right, and Councillor Phil Davis.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Mark, for that presentation. That was very helpful. You mentioned the cladding issue, and we know there are thousands of buildings up and down the country. Are you aware of many such sites within the Selly Oak area, Selly Oak constituency, your operational area?
Yeah, there's a good number. I mean, Selly Oak isn't Billesley Fire Station's station area, but what we've got something called a site-specific risk information check that we do, and these identify any building that has got the flammable cladding, and we've got fire safety officers that will have been involved in these SSRIs as well. And once they've been identified, the level of response, which is basically however many people need to go to that block. If anything happened at that block, you get a level of response. So a block with flammable cladding will initially have 20 personnel and a hydraulic platform to attend that block. So it doesn't matter what the incident is, you get 20 people, which could be 4 large fire engines or a makeup of smaller engines as well. So and what's called a hydraulic platform, which is the big aerial that can reach 8 floors with a jet. So that if there was in an eventuality that there was a flammable cladding incident, we can get a really quick hit on it and get on top of it before it became an issue. All right.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the council's obviously been doing some work on fire safety of its own, retrofitting sprinklers. I don't think there are many sites in Billesley Ward affected, but certainly Ashfield and Wareham House have had work done. And I think obviously that's all to the good. So thanks for that explanation. That's very helpful. Just if I may, Catherine, we're very hot on trying to clear up graffiti in the ward, and I know that some years ago you had one of your fire service people paint a mural on the big wall facing towards Swanshurst Park, which seemed to work quite well in terms of a safety message and also in terms of deterring graffiti. Now that's obviously largely gone now because there's a lot of graffiti on the fire station and in the immediate environs, and I wondered if we could do something, obviously maybe for a later conversation, to possibly repeat that exercise, because it did seem to work, for the period concerned.
Yes, Farrell?
As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that we want to get in touch with the fire station is that the Friends of Swanshurst Park are considering paying for an artist to paint a mural on that wall.
Good.
And that's why we need to get in touch with the fire station, because it is their wall and we can't just go painting on it. But we think that this would be an advantage, and it would prevent, I mean, I actually don't mind a certain amount of graffiti as long as it is artistic. But there is an artist, the one who painted the mural at the side of the off licence on Yardley Wood Road, and we're going to try and get in touch with him if it is okay to do it, and see what he thinks.
Oh, fascinating. Mark, any initial comments or?
It would all be down to so it's the rank above me, the station commander, who makes the decisions on the station, and I would imagine he'd have to go through his group commander to get permissions for it. But I can give you an email address to put any initial things down. So it's Adrian, Adrian .Whitehouse, so WHITE house, HOUSE, at WMFS.net, and he's our station commander. He'd be the first person to go to, because at a fire station you've got 4 watches. I'm off Green Watch, and he's in charge of the 4 watches that Billesley. So he'd be the person to direct your initial request straight to. But Kay's got my details. Again, if you're struggling, if you put that formally to me, I can forward that on anyway as well for you. Not a problem.
So, Mark, I wanted to ask about what are the main issues in Billesley, because we seem to have quite a lot of speeding cars and accidents and things like that. Is that the main thing you get called out to in Billesley, or?
Yeah, so we recently, RTCs are quite a big problem in the Billesley area. We've been doing quite a lot of work. Road traffic collisions, yeah, because there's RTAs was the old word for it, road traffic accidents, and they're saying that not all road traffic are always accidents. They call them road traffic collisions now, and yes, they. What we've been doing with the speeding is, I don't know if you've seen down Vicarage Road, we've been putting up, we've got our own speed section piece of equipment that we've been using. So we've been putting that up in various hotspots around the Billesley area. And what that does is it, for the initial first week, it just collects data of how fast people are driving down the road. And then for the second week, if people go over the speed limit, it flashes up with their speed, or if they're speeding, to slow down, and it's to try and see whether that whether it's actually works or not by using these signs in specific areas. And the road casualty reduction team have been working closely with us on where we should be locating this by being led by data. So that's something that you might see. And I know you see quite a lot more already, but we've got our own one that we're also trying to plot in certain areas. But what we are finding is we're getting quite a lot of accidental dwelling fires. And it's not necessarily just in the Billesley Ward, but we're trying to get that information out that a lot of the white goods are quite dangerous in people's houses. So that, you know, with the recalls of the washing machines and the tumble dryers, and when we're doing our prevention-based work, we're trying to get out there to make people go on the appliance risk register to check their serial numbers on their appliances as well. So we're trying to get our message out there, and I think you'll find there's going to be quite a lot coming out on the Billesley Fire Service social media on that as well. As we start to,
it's mainly washing machines and tumble dryers.
Yeah, so a lot of the Whirlpool ones was the big problems, right. And there is recalls on them, but people are unaware. There's millions of these units in people's houses, so we're getting quite a lot of fires, and so we're trying to tell people to check, and they can either get the repair done before it's too late and they catch fire, or they can get changed. So yeah, there's an appliance risk register that we're telling people about. So yeah, they're the main.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And what about arson? Is arson an issue in Billesley?
To be fair, the Billesley's in quite a good place as a ward. Nothing's particularly spiking, so everything is at sort of similar levels or lower. So the prevention work we're doing is working on the thing. So there's nothing really in spike in the Billesley ward. It's all relatively looking quite good, really, our numbers, and compared to where they are. So we're actually probably lowering the numbers of things rather than seeing an increase. So we're quite happy, to be fair, at Billesley at the moment.
That's brilliant, Mark. Testament to you and your team, I'm sure. Are there any other questions for Mark? No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much then, Mark. Really appreciate that. Right, our next item is on travellers and local parks, and we're really lucky to have Mark Wollstonecroft from the council to come and talk about the council's approach. And I'm sure there'll be questions after you've finished, Mark, because we have been inundated with traveller encampments in Billesley over the last 6 months. So it'll be really interesting to hear what the council's approach is and how we're going to be moving forward. Thank you. So over to Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors and residents. Obviously, we're aware that Billesley and the surrounding areas have been, as you say, Chair, inundated. And what our records show is that the group that's caused most of the problems, they came into the area around about early August, and they set up an encampment on Daisy Farm Park. Since then, my records tell me that they've been on to 22, maybe 23 other sites, because the group does fragment a little bit, and sometimes it can get a little bit difficult tracking them as they break apart and then come back together. They've done a bit of a tour of the city, to be honest with you, as well as Billesley. They've been into Acox Green, they've been in Longbridge, Kings Norton, Kings Heath, Moseley, Bartley Green, Selly Oak, and presently they are in the centre of the city in Nechells. So yeah, they've certainly done the rounds, but it does seem like the core area where they've wanted to settle on a temporary basis has been in around the Billesley and the surrounding wards. The numbers of caravans have varied. They started off with 6 caravans, and then over time the group expanded to between 17 and 20. And like I said earlier on, they have fragmented a couple of times, and the numbers have dropped back down. And we know obviously that they've caused quite a bit of an impact in the areas that they've been. As well as the typical things that we get in terms of the damage to land. So that's the damage to the grass as the vehicles drive over it, as well as any damage to any trip fences and any gates and stuff like that. We are also aware of a certain amount of antisocial behaviour and possibly, and I've got to use the word possibly, some criminal damage. That's obviously with our friends in the force at the moment. So they would be the ones who would have to confirm or deny that. It certainly caused residents and the city council a problem with the travelling. One thing that is interesting is, I mean, our role in environmental health is to regain the possession of the land. We don't deal so much with the antisocial behaviour and the criminality. That's the role of West Midlands Police, and I'll go into the different powers that we have in a minute. This group has been interesting in one way, in that in some ways, although we know that they have been involved in quite a bit of ASB and like I alluded to, possibly some criminal damage, in some ways, from our perspective, there's been an element of compliance with them. Because what we tend to do is we engage with the group and then we serve a notice on the group to get them to vacate the land. And this group have typically vacated on the evening before the scheduled eviction. And that's usually around about 50% of the time. The rest of the time, it's usually been on the morning of the eviction. So from my perspective, they have been relatively compliant with us moving them on. We do get a lot of groups that have that are not that compliant, and they cause us no end of grief. This particular group haven't caused us that end of grief, but they've caused other issues around their occupations. What we tend to do with regards to the powers that we use, and this is where, in some ways, Chair, we're let down by the powers that we can rely on. We have got a bit of a toolbox, and on the one hand, there is the quick approach, and that's what we call serving a common law notice. With a common law notice, we can typically regain possession of a piece of land within, say, 48 hours. So say, for instance, the land is occupied on a Sunday night. We would be aware of it on a Monday, so we'd turn up. We would serve a 48-hour notice, and we'd typically be looking to evict on a Thursday. We've got to give them 2 clear days from the service of the notice. The only problem with that is we tend to use it where groups are relatively compliant, because what we don't want is the police sometimes don't support us with the common law notice. So we need, if a group's compliant, we can fall back on that. But if not, then we would have to consider other powers. And the other weakness in a common law notice is, whilst it is quick to regain possession of a land, it doesn't afford any protection to that land. If we feel that a group is going to cause us a problem with a common law notice, we can serve a notice under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act. That's same as a common law notice in the sense that we are trying to regain possession of a land, but what we have to then do is we have to go to the courts to get an order from the courts to instruct the group to move, and if they don't then move, then they are in breach of the court order. The only problem with that is it's usually around about 10 to 14 days from service of the notice through to getting the court order. On the positive side, it does protect the land for 3 months, but that's only from the members of that group. And like I say, it doesn't stop other travellers coming onto the land. Equally, if a group is fragmented, some members of the group who may not have had the notice served on them can come back onto the land. So it can be quite difficult. And what we were aware of with this particular group is they were causing quite a lot of ASB, and we were getting quite a lot of complaints from residents. So we wanted to use the common law approach to get them moving on and give relief to the local community as soon as possible. So that's the history, if you will, with regards to what we've experienced with this particular group. Where we are at the moment, because they are still in the city, they don't seem to be getting the hint that that we really would like them to start to move on now. And given all of the ASB that we are aware of, we have sent officers down to link in with residents and also owners of businesses, and they've been taking quite a lot of witness statements, and we are pulling them together to put before the court to get an injunction against particular members of this group, and that would preclude them from setting up an unauthorised encampment in Birmingham. Now, we have done injunctions before, and they have been very, very successful at protecting the parks. Quite a lot of the parks were covered by injunctions around 3 or 4 years ago. Unfortunately, there was a case down in London where one local authority tried to protect the entire district from an authorised encampment, and that was challenged by a number of traveller groups and third parties working on their behalf. And it was held that the council could not do that. And the way that they framed it was, you can't take an injunction against persons unknown. So this creates an added challenge for us, and that is that we've got to try to identify the individuals. It's no good asking someone the names, and I'm not being flippant when I say there's quite a few Mickey Mouses doing the rounds, because that is the kind of response that we get back. We very rarely get a proper name. If a traveller knows us and they want to have a good relationship with us, then they might give us their alias, and over time we can build up to know what their proper name is. But typically with a group that's just come to the city, you very rarely get the proper names, hence you need the police on side. What we have started to do is make use of body-worn camera footage, so we can identify an individual's image, and that's actually stands very well in the courts. It's far better than trying to give an alias or indeed a false name. So that tends to work, and that's what we're trying to use with regards to this particular injunction that we're looking with regards to this group. So that's effectively where we are with regards to the group that's been doing the rounds and has caused yourself and your citizens, your residents, quite a lot of problems. The other thing I would like to add is that the City Council does have a transit site, and what we would normally want to do is request the police to direct any member of an authorised encampment to the transit site. We can't do it. Well, we can ask them to go to the transit site, but if they refuse, we have no powers to make them. We always have to fall back on the police, and they have to use their powers to direct a group to the transit site. The problem that we've had at the moment is we've had a particularly difficult group on the transit site who have really dug in, and they've been on for a couple of months. They have left now. We have got them off, and we had to go and get a court order to do this after a number of failed eviction attempts. And that particular group was on the transit site for roughly the similar period that this group has been doing the rounds in your particular areas. So we haven't been able, as a city council, we haven't been able to protect yourself and your residents through the transit site because the transit site's been blocked up, unfortunately. Like I said, the transit site is now, we've now regained possession, and we are in the process of working with housing to repair the damage to the site. There's a toilet block on there, and there's obviously lighting and stuff, and electrics and stuff like that. So we need to get them repaired because a certain amount of damage has been done. So that's in terms of the strategy that we would employ. It would be when we get in an authorised encampment, if there's space on the transit site, we would be going to West Midlands Police. We would be asking West Midlands Police to serve a notice to direct the travellers to the transit site. And if the group choose not to go to the transit site, then they would have to leave the city. They can't go on any other parkland. They can't go on any private land because there is space available for them on a legitimate site. So that's the strategy. That's the plan that we have in place. Like I say, we've had difficulties this year because of realistically some very, very difficult groups that we've had in the city. I suppose that's an overview, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions from yourself or residents.
Mark, that was brilliant, and it shows you really displayed what a challenging situation it is and how much the council is doing to try to solve or to cope with the issue. So, Beryl?
Thank you very much for that. After the last lot of travellers left Swansea's Park, we, our volunteer litter pickers and Friends of Swansea's Park, worked alongside the council workers from Environmental Health to clear up the park. Now, I've got to be perfectly fair on this occasion. I mean, I have seen it a lot worse, and they did seem to make some sort of effort at bagging their rubbish up. Now, we had an idea from the Friends that what might be a good idea in the event that they may come back, that once it is clear that they are there, might it not be worth putting one of those commercial sized bins there for them to just toss their bags in? Because it would be worth the cost of this bin to save the amount of work you'd have to do. I mean, okay, our volunteers' work is free, but you've got to pay your men to come out and do it. And if they would just toss it into there, then it would just have to be taken away.
I think if I can respond to that, thank you for your comments around the staff who went out. What tends to happen is, and I don't want to upset my manager here, and you'll understand why when I respond. It's our pest control service who come out and they tend to do the clean-up. So the parks team, they will ask our pest control guys to go out, and the lads from pest control are really, really good. they've dealt with this now for a number of years, and they know where to look to find all of the bits of rubbish, fly tipping, and I've got to say, the fecal matter that is left behind in the bushes, and they are really, really good at clearing it up. And from our perspective, parks pay pest control, so that's where I don't want to upset my manager. It's part of his budget. That being said, it is a valid question, and I think it's one that I'm going to have to take away and pass to my colleagues in Parks Department, because they will know the cost of, say, a Euro bin, for instance, versus the cost of a clean-up, and they then got to balance which of the two is the better option. I know from the group that we've had doing the rounds recently, as I say, we moved them on quite quickly. So what we didn't get much of an opportunity for the rubbish to build up. If they're on there longer, even a small group of travellers can generate quite a lot of rubbish, and it's not necessarily all from the particular families. Sometimes it's other people coming and fly tipping, sometimes it's other travellers coming along and adding to the rubbish, and sometimes it's the group themselves, taking their business waste and getting rid of it that way. But common sense would dictate it's better to have it all in one place where it can be easily removed. It just doesn't always stack up. I've seen instances where we've got groups who have put bags of rubbish in a nice pile, and they're really easy to shift, and then others, they just scatter it all over the place. And sometimes you can work with the group, and they can still throw it back in your face, if you understand what I mean. So it's a tough one. I don't know really what the best answer is. I'll take it away. I'll raise it as a question, and I'll feed it back through yourself, Chair.
That's brilliant, Mark. Yeah, and Beryl did send that to me a few weeks ago, and I did forward it on. So hopefully it is already been looked into. But it again shows the complexity of the whole situation. So thank you, Mark. Right, Phil. You're on mute, Phil.
Oops. Things fallen down. Yes, I'm very happy to also raise Beryl's suggestion, because as chair of licensing and public protection, I get reports about the unauthorised encampment. And in fact, we had a committee meeting yesterday where there was a full report on this. As Mark says, the problem has been that our powers have been reduced from last year, where we had a more successful, quicker operation to move people on, by the problems with the particular site that was trashed. I'm going to visit that site at the end of the month with the chair of housing, because housing has the budget, you see. So what we're doing from licensing and public protection, particularly working with Mark Croxford, head of environmental health, is to put pressure on housing in the nicest possible way to get them to get the site sorted, and to get security for that site sorted and the other sites, so that we've got protected sites which officers can then use to direct people to, with the assistance of the police, and that gives us greater powers. And that, with the injunction strategy, was working quite well about 18 months, 2 years ago, but fell by the wayside because of the problems Mark has very well described. So we are on, I'm very much aware of this issue, because as I say, I am able to pick this up, and I get reports from the committee, and I'll report back, obviously, myself on the on the issue about the sites. Oh, and can I just say security? I did raise the issue of additional barriers and so on. Obviously, would be a big cost on all the parks in our area, but I understand that well, I've driven past and seen it, that there have been some barriers in the way of logs and so on placed along in parts of Swanshurst Park. I think more needs to be done there. But I did write to Darren Share, the boss of parks, and said, what about security, in response to this? And he said he would look at that. So hopefully that's come out of that. But I think there's more we need to press for in terms of, making the parks secure. But the trouble is, of course, if people want to criminally damage gates and the rest of that, they will do that and get in anyway, as Mark well knows. And that's the problem we face. But a few more physical barriers are not a bad thing, and we're getting some focus on that from, as I say, parks. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. That's great. Mark, you had a hand up. Was there something more you wanted to say?
Yeah, just to pick up on a point that Councillor Davis made with regards to the transit site. One of the other things that has caused us a problem in the last 18 months is COVID. To be fair, we had a group on the site who, because of the COVID restrictions, we couldn't move them on, and that particular group, because they were on the site, other members of the travelling community felt that they were being tolerated more, so it encouraged more travellers onto the site. So that compounded it, and we couldn't just move them on, even though they were still travelling. So it's been very complex, and I don't want to, I know COVID is the demon of the last 2 years, and I will lay part of this at the feet of the disease as well. It has and exacerbated the problems that we've faced.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Mark? That's brilliant then, Mark. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate you giving up your evening to come and talk to us here in Billesley. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right.
Any time. Do you mind if I pop off now? Yeah,
please do. Thank you so much. Right, and now Phil wanted to talk about the Billesley Environmental Project. Phil, have we got an update on that?
Yeah, just very quick, because basically we've now submitted, as you know, Catherine, in our names, the application to trusts and charities, Birmingham Municipal Charity. We're seeking £10,000, which is their maximum grant. I mean, if we got 5,000, we could do something useful with that. The idea is that the money will be held by housing, and then we would be able to set up this this structure, this unincorporated association. And the principle is that we would act as a local body to identify areas where we could assist people to remove graffiti. Maybe, also provide funds for activity by other groups like the bin baggers or friends of the parks. And what I now need to do is press trusts and charities to get a decision, because they do take a long time sometimes, and it has to go to the committee. So I'm going to be talking to the chair of trusts and charities, just asking him about the procedure and making sure it's on their radar. But I'm hopeful that we could get a positive response, and then we'll have some local capacity in Billesley to actually pick up some of these issues. And we have had a number of people offering to volunteer to join the committee that would oversee that. And of course, the whole thing would then be, as I say, audited in the normal way by the council to make sure that there was proper probity and management. So we're not there yet, but we've started the process, and we'll be pushing the municipal charity for a decision. Thanks.
That's great, Phil. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I've got to go. It's Mark from the fire service. Thanks,
Mark. Really appreciate you coming, and thank you for your update. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you. See you.
So much. Thank you. Bye. Okay, great. And then we were going to have Sergeant Tommy from the police coming, but she's just text messaged me to say that she's come back from police cadets travelling. The traffic is horrendous. That she's sorry wasn't able to come. I think that might be the end of the meeting, unless there are other issues that people want to discuss. And Steve has only just joined us. Sorry, Steve. Are there any other local issues that people would like to discuss? Yes, Beryl.
It's a shame that the police officer is not here. If you could possibly take up with the police. There seems to be a huge upsurge in crime in this area, which is extremely worrying, particularly on Colborne Road, Westridge Road and Brook Lane. There seem to be a lot of car thefts, a lot of burglaries. One that I heard of, and even allowing for the fact there may be some embellishment, I don't know. Apparently somebody on Brook Lane, quite early in the evening, smashed their way through a double glazed window to go and ransack someone's house. And it is somewhat worrying that it seems to be a very high level of crime. If you could possibly mention this to the police and see if they're actually making any arrests here. I mean, I happen to know that our colleague from Street Watch had 2 cars stolen off his front drive last week. He has got the perpetrator on camera. Now, this should not be too difficult. I'm sure it's one of the usual suspects that the police must know. I would really like to know if they've actually managed to nab somebody for that, because you can clearly see the bloke's face unmasked, driving his car away.
One of the things is we used to have regular updates from the police in tasking meetings, sometimes in a forum, sometimes in their own tasking meeting, at least once every couple of months with the statistics for crime, so you could see whether it's going up or down. But we don't seem to have that anymore. So that's a question, because the question Beryl's asking is actually a question that could be asked every month. What's crime like in Billesley?
Yes, Bill. Thank you for that, Barry. Bill and Beryl.
We do have the constituency based local partnership group, which I sit on with a couple of the other the other area councillors. I can raise this, but I think we can ask Dawn Twomey, who has been very helpful, about this very issue, because she ought to be able to come up with some information about trends. And then at the next forum, we can certainly produce that. But I mean, it's a good question.
Well, why don't we have a tasking meeting anymore? We used to have police tasking meetings with the neighbourhood sergeant every couple of months. They seem to have just gone.
No, we have had a couple of informal meetings. So I suppose we could, Catherine, turn those into police tasking meetings. I mean, because Dawn's very happy to meet us. But as Barry makes a good point, really, the structure has gone. I think we used to have it when we had the district committees, didn't we? That was a particular point at which you could go along to the district committee, and you'd have all the ward members there, and you could say this is happening in my ward. But yeah, I take the point. We need to get that information. What's the trend? I mean, again, we've all got our own experiences. Because my daughter lives in Albury, and carjacking seems to be in fashion because she had this happen to her. Unfortunately, they didn't get away with it, but it was an attempt about 4 o'clock in the morning, caught on CCTV. So yes, it is concerning, isn't it? So we need to get the figures, see what the trends are, and find some way of reporting that back on a reasonably regular basis. So we will take that back. Doreen would like to say something.
Yes, Doreen.
I couldn't agree more about the police. I can't even get in touch with them. It's awful. I went up to the fire station because I know they'd got an office there to try and get in touch with them. And I spoke to a lovely fire officer lady, and she went inside and asked the question. They hadn't even got the decency to come out. And that was about 3 months ago. But it's not all about me. It's about we have got no information about what's happening police in the area. You don't see a policeman, but you'll see a police car go past and things like that. Where I live on the council, we're not having much trouble as far as I know. So I'm not on about that. I'm on about people being aware to get able to get in touch with a police officer. And that a rare species, I'll tell you that now, a rare species.
Well,
I'm sorry,
we don't have that. We're members of Street Watch. So we do a patrol for a couple of hours a week wearing one of our high-vis jackets, different colour from the Friends of Brandwood Cemetery and the Friends of Swanshurst Park and the Friends of Trittiford. We've got special ones that say Street Watch as well. So our hall is full of high-vis jackets, but never mind. And so we see the PCSO quite regularly.
But the PCSOs never answer emails or messages.
No, you have to flag down the car or they go on patrol with them. And they're very happy if we patrol and report to them, and they will come out as well with us. So we do. It is possible to see them.
But you can't get in touch with them.
You can't email them. No, they don't answer their emails. That's
or
true.
their phone.
Or their phone.
We've got some general numbers we give out, but it's a fair point. And I think what we need to do is get Dawn Twomey to one of our meetings, or set up a special meeting. I know Catherine's been very active on this already with Dawn, to see if we can, get the information you want. Because I take the point, since the police station as a visible presence has gone, even though they're there, you get the sense of they're not accessible in the way that they were, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for that feedback. I will be messaging Dawn as soon as we get Sergeant Dawn, as soon as we get off the meeting with all that information. And I really hope that we can arrange something soon to get all that information out, because I agree it's really, really important. There was something that I wanted to say from things that people have raised. Oh yeah, so Phil and I have got a meeting next week on Thursday with the Police and Crime Commissioner. So he's actually coming to Billesley to meet with us to talk about neighbourhood policing, because as is what you've just been describing, neighbourhood policing in Billesley is not good enough, that there's not enough funding in it, that they're taken off to move on to what's considered to be obviously more urgent cases, but that leaves Billesley without a police team to deal with the things that you've been raising. So we do have the meeting lined up. It's taken me like 4 months to arrange this meeting, but we do have a meeting next week on Thursday with the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we're really looking forward to that, and hopefully we can have things moving forward. But I will raise all those points to Sergeant Dawn Twomey as soon as the meeting's finished. Thank you so much. Are there any other police issues or any other local issues that anyone would like to raise? No, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really, really happy that you could all give up your Thursday evening to join us, and I'm really delighted that the rugby club has won their money to run that event, and we can't wait to attend. So that was great. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.
It's a quick one for me.
How are you, Steve? All right?
Yeah, I just having a trouble with the traffic light